Hello and welcome back to the channel to another of my interview series. Today, very interesting. I've already had an amazing chat with the gentleman we're going to meet now. His name is allegedly Dave, and he told me he rides on an electric unicycle. If that's not freaky enough, he helps people for free. Let's introduce him. Hello, allegedly Dave.
Hello, Richard. Good to see you.
It's lovely to meet you. We've had a lovely chat just before we started filming the interview. And yeah, you're going to have to tell me, because my background, a lot of people may not know this in the new audience that I've gathered, is that I used to do juggling and unicycling, fire eating, lay on a bed of nails in the corporate entertainment circuit, gala, fun days, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I used to ride a unicycle. You just told me that you ride an electric unicycle over the downs.
Yeah.
You've got to, before we get into the stuff we are going to talk about, you've got to tell me about that. How do you stay up? Because
Right.
I mean, a unicycle, you're using your feet to turn the thing, and that's how you control your balance.
Yeah, well, this is a bit of cheating, really, because the unicycle, literally, it's electrically powered,
Yeah.
and if it detects that it's leaning forward, it will go forward to right it. If it detects it's leaning back, it will go backwards. So if you lean forwards, right, it's going to continually try and right itself, and so go forwards.
So
If
that's
lean
how you
back,
power
it's gonna
yourself.
stop. Yeah. But it's not stabilized side to side. So
So you can
as you're going, yeah, you could, but it's like a bicycle. If you're going along, you're not going to fall
you're
off.
not going to fall. What
So-
an amazing thing. And
And
how, I mean, I can't imagine where the batteries go and how far it travels.
Well, the one I've got is has a range of about 100 miles of one charge,
Wow.
and it's clocked at about 51 miles an hour. Not that I'd ever go that fast, but
How extraordinary. I mean, are you not really allowed to on the roads, I would have thought?
it's a grey area.
Right,
And
okay. Well, let's
it's
not-
an area that I you know what, if they manage to legislate against it, I'm still going to ride the thing, because I don't play with legislation anymore.
No, good for you. No, I could just imagine, there's a big van going along at, say, 45, and you just careen past at 51 miles an hour. Anyway, blimey, that's the sort of person we're up against today. We're not up against. That's the bad thing to say. We're dealing with allegedly Dave on his electric unicycle. So, Dave, you said I introduced you because you told me this, that you help people for free. So we've got to get into that. What does that mean? Because helping
Well-
people for free is a very laudable thing, for one thing.
Well, I used to be a computer programmer on Wall Street, and I went through my midlife crisis and realized that what I was doing was actually hurting people. You know,
For money.
yes,
Yeah.
enslaving people to a computer and
Right.
taking the humanity out of decision making. So I essentially decided that I'm going to try atone for all that and help people for free, because I kind of bought into this idea that be the change you want to see in the world. And I would like to see people just helping others without thought of reward.
Right. And that's a very magnanimous and a noble thing, because most people will know that if you do something for free, even if it's just smiling at somebody, the reward that you get back is much nicer than if you've paid for it.
Yes, I'm now paid in thanks. So and that is more worthwhile than getting paid, with digits in a bank account somewhere.
So the cynic watching this, and I have to put my foot into the cynic's shoes, would say, how do you pay the bills with thanks?
Right. Well, here's the weird thing about how the world works. It doesn't work the way you think it does.
Right.
Yeah. The world is really here to sustain you. Right? And there's a real way the world works, which is, if you want to do something, you have the passion to do it, and you sort of go for it, and all the obstacles go out of the way, right? But they've created this construct, this commercial financial construct, and they say, don't look here, look here. If you want to do something, you've got to, get this qualification and pay this fee and jump through all these hoops. And maybe if you dance enough, you'll get to do what you want to do. But that's not the real one. This is.
So, right. So, and I get that because I've spoken to people about the education system, and it's blatantly obvious to me now, and I think it was obvious to me, but I didn't really compute it properly, that the education system seems to be a way of indoctrinating people to be good slaves and to pay their taxes and to get the kind of jobs that the government would like you to do, rather than being perhaps entrepreneurial, having your own thoughts, your own ideas on things, and questioning everything.
Yeah, I think personally it's more about distracting you away from your own purpose. Because there is something that you can do that nobody else can do. It's merely from the fact that you are the only one who sees through your eyes here and now.
That's
so
true.
You've got a perspective that nobody else will ever have. Okay? Which means you can think thoughts that nobody else will ever have. You're going to say something that nobody else will ever say. Yeah, and that's what they don't want. They don't want somebody, ordinary to actually cause a revolution. Be the next Alexander the Great or something. That's probably a bad example, but the next world leader or something that comes out from the grassroots.
Yes, and with the perspective of the grassroots.
Yes. So they basically indoctrinate us into believing that, no, you're not unique, you're not special. Here's a set of jobs that you're qualified to do.
Yes.
And that's it, rather than, before you enter the school system, you have unlimited potential to do anything, right? And then the school system is about narrowing that potential down to a set of jobs that the system wants you to do.
And I can illustrate that because when I was at school, at a secondary comprehensive in the 1970s, and I was 15 years old, and what used to be, all through my school life, the science teacher for one day only became my careers officer, magic transformation. And he said to me, Richard, what do you want to do when you leave school? And at the time, I said, I want to be a film director or an actor. And he said, oh, that's interesting. And he brought out one of these grey boxes with the old filing system, the card filing system. And he went, well, there's a job as a printer down in the Carfax. He said, how about that? It pays £30 a week. And I went, oh, okay then. And that was it. It was like no embracing my idea at all. It was like, yeah, well, that's a silly, stupid idea, isn't it? Well, and so I was shoved into that. Actually, as it turned out, it was a really nice job. Taught me a lot about people. Taught me about how to present myself on paper, and which then transferred to the internet and things like that. But at the time, it was like, oh, okay. So I made the best of it. But you can see how other people perhaps don't.
The strong personality will mould whatever they've been sort of allocated back into their passion. Yeah. So, I mean, I was always, the only things I was good at school was art and electronics, which doesn't, there isn't really much need for, I don't know, people who paint transistors or something. But
it's very difficult to get those stripes on those transistors.
Yeah, I know. I tried. But yeah, so I ended up becoming a computer programmer, doing user interfaces. So I was able to put a lot of art into the front end of computer. So I managed to do what I wanted to do anyway, even though I was still put into a box.
So what sort of things, I mean, you say you do things for people to help people for free, and what sort of area and so what sort of journey does that take you on?
Well, I offer pretty much anything I can do, and which is, I've gained a lot of sort of miscellaneous experience, like carpentry for one thing, and, I if somebody needs help, I offer my help. So it's mainly come in the form of helping people with their illnesses, because part of my journey was finding out about the healthcare system and what it really is. and I found out how to heal myself of everything that was wrong with me. And I started healing my family and friends and everything. And so I ended up writing a book called The Human Body Owner's Workshop Manual.
The
And
Human Body Owner's Workshop Manual.
yeah, and I offer
Is that on all good bookshops?
Yeah, yeah.
We
you can
must
get it on
we
Amazon.
must link to it. We must link to it, and
Okay.
yeah, that'd be. I got to buy it. Have a good. I love books, so
So I help people with that knowledge and everything I've found out over this journey. Usually it will help people in one way or another.
I'm just writing it down. The Human Body Workshop Manual. Is that what you?
Owner's Workshop Manual.
Owner's Workshop. Human Body Own. Oh, yeah, of course it is. It's like a
I want-
Haynes
I want-
Manual, is it?
Exactly. I wanted it to be like Haynes Manual.
Oh, brilliant.
And the first design of it was that it looked like a Haynes Manual. But when I was just about to publish it, Haynes told me that they'd sue me if I...
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
But no, what a brilliant idea. So yeah, so into health. Funny enough, I just done an interview with Clive de Carl, and we were talking about a whole host of different things. And one of the interesting things that we were talking about was salt, and how good salt is for the body. Not the salt that is free flowing table salt, but things like Celtic salt, which is very good for the body with water, because it gets into the cells and it's really good.
I'd actually disagree, to be honest.
Oh,
but,
there we go. Let's we'll have a punch up here. That's no. It's good to hear the other side. Go for it.
A lot of what I talk about is to get rid of inorganic minerals like salt. Because salt, when it dries, it recrystallizes usually into a form that irritates the body. So
that's an interesting.
If you take salt in, your body actually draws water to try and flush out that salt.
Oh right,
yeah.
So there we go. I'll have to go back to Clive and say, yeah, we have a different point of view, and that's what's so great about doing the show, because you talk to different people and they've all got slightly different views on different things, and it's nice to be able to just sort of entertain all these ideas rather than go, oh, I just disagree with that and have nothing to do with it. Because from my point of view, there's so many interesting people like yourself. And one of the things that I know that you're doing talks about at the moment is what you've called the Great Mortgage Swindle.
Well, it's a great big mortgage caper.
Right, okay.
A swindle was somebody else's
thing. Oh, right, the Great Big Mortgage Caper.
Yes. It's essentially, I started looking into mortgages. I've had 3 mortgages in my life, and I realised that I knew nothing about them. I'd blindly gone into them.
Yeah,
and,
I guess like most people.
Yeah, we just blindly go into them, not knowing how they work and what was the mechanism behind it, and if we were being deceived in any way.
Oh, as if we would. As if we would, allegedly, Dave.
No, we can trust the banks, can't we?
Of course we can. They're such nice, benevolent people. So kind.
Well, when I actually started looking into it and doing the research, it was incredible. The amount of fraud and deception is just unbelievable. And we've been indoctrinated to believe the way the bank sees it, but underneath it's like completely different to the way we think of it. So, for example, if we were to get a mortgage for £100,000, the bank will make something in a region of 1.8 million, whether you pay that mortgage off or not.
Okay, that's rather staggering.
Yes, and even more staggering than that, they've worked it out so that mathematically 70% of people will never be able to pay their mortgage off.
Really?
Yes. I mean, it's hidden because it's, we're looking at long time scales, 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
And there's the thing that if they keep making more, making mortgage loans, well, that sort of enables that first lot of people to pay their mortgages off. But then it creates a bigger problem later on which they lend more mortgages out to deal with that lot, which creates an even bigger problem, and so on and so on and so on. It just keeps rolling on, and it only falls down when they stop making mortgage loans, which is what they're doing now.
Right. Oh, okay.
Can you see it's like a Ponzi scheme?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm fortunately have paid off my mortgage, so I believe that I own my own property, but I really understand that I don't actually own the land that it sits on, which makes it very difficult. Because a freehold is you're only holding it. You don't.
Yes, and you're listed as a tenant, aren't you?
Yeah, which is annoying.
Well, actually, I got contacted by somebody who just paid off their mortgage, and they sent me a copy of the email that they got from Land Registry. And so I was looking at it, and instead of the word owner, they put proprietor several times.
Right.
They're now the proprietor. So whenever I see a word that I don't expect to see, I go straight to Black's Law Dictionary and have a look at it. Yeah, and it says proprietor. It says proprietor is almost synonymous with owner.
Almost.
So if it's almost synonymous, what is it not?
Yes. Where's the bit that's missing? Exactly.
Yes. So they're telling you right there, you're not the owner, even though you paid it all off. So, it's all love.
So that's when they say you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Well, actually, just like everything else, they've already implemented that. We don't own anything. Let me give a little example. Imagine you're lying in bed on a Sunday, and you send your little son out with a note to your friend John, who owns a grocery shop down the road, So you send out a note that says, please give little Billy, a week's
He was
worth
John
of
a minute ago. You've
John,
changed.
No, your son, whatever you
Yeah.
Please give little Billy a week's worth of shopping. You know I'm good for it. I'll pay you when I see you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you've given them basically an IOU, right?
Yeah.
So John at the shop, right? Not your son Billy. John at the shop says, "Okay, Richard is good for it." So and he hands little Billy the week's worth of shopping. Okay. So the following week, John has a blowout in his car, right? And so he goes to the garage and he realizes he hasn't got any money. So he says to Steve in the garage, I haven't got any money, but will you accept this? It's worth a week's worth of shopping. And Steve says, okay. So later on, Steve goes down to the pub and, Peter, the publican, says, you've got a bar bill here that you've got to pay off. And Steve said, well, I haven't got any money, but will you accept this, which is worth a week's worth of shopping? And so on and so on. Okay. So who do you think owns everything that IOU has paid for?
Is it the guy who wrote it out to begin with?
Yes, you. Because you're the one promising to provide the value to buy all these things.
Yes, I promised to pay the bearer on demand.
Right, so you technically own everything that is bought with that note.
So if it was a lump of gold, and you said you gave it to Steve, and then you'd have something of value then that you're exchanging that with. But because it's a promissory note, it's a different kettle of fish.
It's a promise to pay, and you're the one holding the promise. You're the promisor, okay? So we have bought all this stuff with banknotes.
Yes.
Which are bank promissory notes. Because somewhere on there is a signature of somebody from the Bank of England. So he's the one who owns everything, or the Bank of England who owns everything that you pay for with these notes.
So right, okay. Now, if you say that, because I get confused on all of this, because there's this whole thing about contract law and business where you say, well, if the contract is not fully disclosed, then that contract is null and void. If you think that you're buying something with what constitutes money, but is technically not, is that contract then null and void that you actually then do own it?
Well, these contracts are, yes, virtually all of these contracts that we're dealing with are null and void, right? But here's the thing: if you start acting as though it is a contract, then it's a contract. You know, it's a contract by performance. So if you act like it's a contract, now it is. Yeah, so we get the same thing when we buy a car. You know, we assume we're buying a car to be the owner of that car, but we're actually just buying it to be the keeper of it.
Mm.
Right?
But you give it away when you register the car to the DVLA.
Yes, but here's the thing: now they've changed it, so it's already registered, and you're not re-registering it when you're just assigning your name to it. So
I see.
Yeah, so we assume one thing, right, but the reality is something else. And even though that something else is not lawful, well, because we act as though it's actually an actual contract, well, now it is.
Right. Yeah. Well, that does make sense. But and ignorance doesn't matter in the eyes of the law, does it? There's all of that. Ignorance doesn't matter in the eyes of the law.
In the legal system.
In the legal system. Yeah. No, that's right.
Yes, it is confusing. You're right.
And if it's confusing for me, then for some members of the audience, they'll be going, "Oh my God, what's he on about? That Richard Vobes, he's opened another can of worms." So what do we do about this? I mean, we haven't really sort of gone into the mortgage in any great detail, but talking about these promissory notes and things like that, where you then say, "Well, actually, technically, you don't own it because the note has purchased it really for the first person who issued the note." How do we break that cycle?
As far as the money's concerned, we don't break that cycle because we're all used to it. We're all stuck with it right now. But as it pertains to the mortgage, we break that cycle by becoming adults, right? Understanding what we're doing, because, as I said, I went into these 3 mortgages as a child. Because only a child will just sort of go into things without knowing what they're all about.
Yes.
But we've all gone into these things as children, but it's incumbent on us to face it like an adult, which means understanding it.
Normally when you take it, they don't tell you that they are now going to create a fraud. And say, come into the bank, we'll give you the money, and by the way, we're going to make $1 million out of you, just so you know. They don't actually tell you that, though, do you? So that you're thinking, "Oh, thanks ever so much for lending me them. It's so kind of you to do that. And I promise I will pay it back the £100,000 as soon as I possibly can."
Well, right there, you've fallen for the first fraud. Right there, okay? Because you just said that they gave you the money.
Yes.
That's the first fraud, right? Because when you go into the bank to get this loan, right, they give you a loan agreement. And on that loan agreement, there's an amount, there's a date by which you have to pay it back. And when you sign it, now it's got your signature on it. Well, what you've actually done, right, what you've actually filled in right there is a promissory note. Yeah? It looks like a loan agreement, but it's actually a promissory note.
I see. Yes.
As soon as you wrote your signature there, you've created money, right? So the money that funds a loan, you just created, and all the bank does, the bank gets that loan agreement that you just filled in, right? You just filled that in, right? It gets the bank loan agreement. It goes, "Thank you very much," and here you go. Here's your money.
So they've given you back the money you've created yourself.
Exactly.
So in theory, that's it. You wouldn't need to.
That's it. That is all there is. The transaction's over with. You don't have to deal with them anymore.
So, could you not just create your own money then? That way.
Yes.
I mean, how you say, "Oh, I want to buy that car. How much is that car?" It's a very nice car, £100,000. Hang on a minute. I just. I promise to pay us 100. There's a signature. There you go. Is that all right? Why are you looking at me like I'm an idiot? I've just created £100,000. You fool! Give me the keys.
No. This really only works with banks and government establishments, government agencies and stuff. You know, when you're dealing with, if I was dealing with you, a promissory note isn't going to do it. No. In this system, but when you're dealing with with banks and government agencies and things, right? They only work in promissory notes. Banks accept promissory notes left, right, and centre.
So there you are at the bank. You've done this thing, and they've gone. You're thinking, right, here's your money, which is the same stuff back. By the way, you're going to pay us over the next 20, 25 years this extra money that you didn't really need to pay us, but you've sort of agreed to it. So could we have the first instalment now, please? And
exactly.
So this is how it all works. My goodness, anybody getting a mortgage right now, if they've just signed it, you think they're going, dope.
Dope. Well,
oh my God.
It gets even more fun. Yeah.
Okay.
So now the bank is holding this promissory note, which has, say, £100,000 on it, which you're going to end up paying £300,000 on it. Yeah.
Yes.
With interest. So what do you think the bank does with this piece of paper?
Well, they're going to go and perhaps make more money out of it.
Yes, they sell it.
They sell it. I've got £100,000. Who's going to have this? The highest bidder.
Well, yes. Think about it. Yeah, it's got a face value of £100,000 on it, but over 30 years, it's worth £300,000. So an investor will pay £100,000 for it, knowing that over 30 years he's going to get 3 times that. So It's a good investment. Yeah. So they sell it on the securities market without your permission.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Bloody hell. This is quite a revelation.
Yeah. So not only did they not give you any money in the first place.
Yes.
They've taken the money that you supplied and basically sold it and got repaid for the whole thing anyway, even though they didn't give you any money in the first place. So can you see just with that yes, you can see how they're starting to multiply their takings, as it were, right? Just on that initial idea of a loan.
Wow, isn't that is amazing? That is amazing. So in other words, and people can't do this, but if you could just set up your own bank, you could sit in there and get people to say, yes, certainly we'll loan you some money. Here's fill in this. That's great. Oh, there's £100,000. Don't ask for anything. Just pay us when you can, or as agreed. And suddenly you'll be sitting there. Oh, I need £100,000 now. Could I sell that to you? 100, great, because it's secured for 30 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you could set up your own bank, you could do that, presumably, but they won't let you set up your own bank. They won't let you. No, because they don't want everyone to do it.
Yeah, they want to get the profits themselves.
Yeah, greedy buggers.
And so what they've just sold on the securities market is what's known as a mortgage-backed security. Right?
Yeah.
Or technically they were called collateralized debt obligations, which if you came across that phrase before, it was the thing that caused the financial crash in 2008.
Right. Okay.
Because what they were doing is the banks were selling these promissory notes and putting them into a big pile of maybe 200 or 300 similar promissory notes, and getting the rating agency to rate them and say, yes, all these mortgages, okay, they're definitely going to get paid. Right? So we're going to give it a AAA rating, right? And then people were investing in that stack of mortgages, and because they're AAA rated, and then eventually what they did was opened them up and looked, and in 2008 or before 2008, the banks were selling mortgages to anybody,
to people who couldn't pay it back.
Exactly, and people were getting mortgages in the name of their dogs, and
Here, Rover.
Yeah. So
put your paw on there. There we are. Look, is that all right? Yeah, great.
Yeah, and street sweepers were getting like 3 houses and a beach house in Malibu and all this, and with no hope of paying it back.
Yeah.
And that's what caused the crash.
I pay you back in leaf litter. I'll get it up this afternoon.
Yeah.
And so that caused the crash. So the system is okay as far as you are able to service the con or make the con happen to people who will actually pay it back, because once you're selling it to Rover the dog or the leaf litter sweeper, who can't pay it back, that's when the system starts falling apart.
Yeah, well, if people didn't look in there, right, it would have carried on. But people actually looked and found that there's no way.
But even in those situations, it wasn't like the banks all fell apart, was it? It was those people who couldn't. But people were just losing their houses and thrown onto the street. So the bankers, in the end, were still bailed out and looked after.
Right. Well, that's the real cost of all this. The people at the sharp end of all this. And it turns out, because the banks are being so fraudulent, right? In America, they're a lot further ahead than us, and they started to pick apart the fraud. And one of the frauds is when they sell these mortgages onto different banks. Well, there has to be paperwork that show that all parties signed, to agree to this sale, right? But obviously the paperwork didn't exist because they were just doing it electronically, right? And people started to notice and then take the bank to court, right? And so the response of the bank, right, was to fabricate all the paperwork. So that they literally got college students all in a room like a sweatshop to basically just furiously sign these mortgages as bank representatives and notaries, yeah. And literally they were faking the paperwork so that they can throw people out on the street.
Good God, that is awful. That is awful.
And they call them robo-signers, by the way.
Robo-signers.
Yeah.
Because they were pretty robotic, I suppose.
Yeah, there was one particular person, Linda Green, who apparently in space of 1 week was the vice president of something like 20 banks, and every one of her signatures was different because there was all these college students signing Linda Green.
Signed a Linda Green.
Who am I, Linda? How do you spell Linda? Linda. What kind is it? Right, thanks.
That is bonkers. It's funny, and it would be still funny if it wasn't true and people weren't suffering. Yeah,
that's the thing. The problem here is that we're facing a mortgage Armageddon now. Right? It's virtually everyone, no matter what situation they're in, right, they're coming to a point where they're either not going to be able to pay the mortgage very soon, or something's going to come up where they're going to have to come up with a lump sum which they're not going to be able to pay, or whatever. Now, in this country, we're not used to fighting mortgages, so the only time that people tend to start fighting is when the bailiff and the police are at the door trying to evict them, when it's far too late.
It's too late, yeah.
So I'm basically going around giving strategies for being able to keep your home by essentially preempting their process and actually turning it back on the bank.
Right. So there is a mechanism in which one can turn it round and help people. Obviously, you're doing it.
Yes, by essentially exposing the fraud and getting the truth, in ironclad format, and keeping that in your back pocket. And essentially, there's a few strategies to go after the bank. And whatever happens, you've always got the absolute truth in your back pocket.
So having that absolute truth, would that mean then they won't take you to court when it comes to the nth degree? They won't take you because that means everything comes out and it's all revealed.
Yes, because now you've got the absolute truth that they've agreed to.
Yes.
And if they want to take you to court, well, hang on, we've got this.
Yeah, which is a sort of suicide if they take you to court.
And if it ever comes in front of a jury, and they obviously do not want this to go in front of a jury, because that means you get the opportunity to explain the amount of fraud that's going on.
To 12 just men and women.
Who probably have mortgages themselves.
Exactly.
Who go, what the?
Yeah, no, blimey. That is amazing. It's but thank God. So we need hundreds of you to be able to help lots of people so that the country doesn't all find themselves in the problem in the dog doings, because you can only do so much, presumably.
Well, that's why I'm doing all these talks around the country. I'm sort of getting this knowledge out to to a whole bunch of real people who, I think, will get to that point where, the choice is to go down their process and end up being evicted, or at least start fighting. Okay, and those will then be able to teach others to do the same, and so on and so on. And that's what I'm hoping anyway.
Yeah, well, that's very laudable, and what should happen. I'm sure people watching this will be interested and want to get in touch and find out how you do it. So where do you go and do your talks?
Well, because I'm just one bloke with one pair of hands, I have to kind of leave it to local people, and I say to them all, if you can get a group of people together and somewhere to hold it, I'll come and give the talk.
Oh, right.
And so literally, people in certain areas will just come back to me and say, "Well, I've got 50 people and got a hall to have it in. Can you come on this date?" So I've got dates also, kind of booked all the way to, I think it's the end of June, and then I've got to take a bit of a break.
I know how that feels.
And I think after that, I'm going to Scotland, so I have a few dates up in Scotland and do the sort of north area. So,
brilliant.
And probably back down and do some of the south that I've missed.
And how's it going with people? Are they getting it? Are you seeing this in operation? Are people coming back saying, "Dave, it really helped. I'm in this situation now. I was in this dreadful situation, but everything's sorted out"?
I'm getting that everyone seems to be inspired and ready and willing to do something before it gets to the point where the point of no return.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I'm also getting people who are already at the point of no return, sort of desperately asking for help. Which
yes,
there's not much I can offer at this point. It's here's the thing: just like all of these systems that we find ourselves falling foul of, there's a process that they have. It's like a set of railway tracks, okay, and it always ends at either payment or punishment, okay. And once they get you on those tracks, there's no way off, okay. The trick is to not let them put you on those tracks.
Yes.
Right. So an example is if you get a notice in the post for something like a speeding ticket or notice of intended prosecution. Well, if you look up the word notice in the legal dictionary, it actually means offer.
Right.
So it's an offer of intended prosecution. Do you want to be prosecuted? Okay. So at that moment, at that point, you're not on the tracks yet. They're making you an offer.
Because they want to get you on the tracks.
They want to get you on the tracks. And depending on how you respond to that offer, right, you might put yourself on those tracks and now they've got you. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But there are ways of holding them at the offer stage. Okay. And that's the approach I take. Hold them at the offer stage. Don't let them progress, and don't fall for the tricks that will, allow them to put you on the tracks.
So we were talking to a chap called Sovereign Pete, and he was telling us that a lot of the legalese, the language that they use, is a different language than what we would think the language is. So that words are switched round. Things like a trial jury doesn't mean a jury trial. A jury trial doesn't mean a trial by jury, and things like. And it's very easy to think that one word means, like you say, notice is actually in legalese offer, and you think, and state and summon, again is another one, because it sounds like you're summoning the dead, or you've been summoned, and it's a big official sort of thing. But again, that's another sort of offering,
invitation,
invitation.
Yeah. Legalese is a foreign language, a complete foreign language. It's just that it uses English words, but all the definitions have been changed. Yeah. So you think you're speaking in English when you're in a legal setting, right? The other party is hearing you in legalese.
Right.
So you're kind of bumbling around, incriminating yourself and agreeing to things without knowing it.
I saw a video some time ago now. I think it was an Australian chap who had a video about this sort of legalese thing, and he said you can get one of these summons, and it says, "We are writing to you to tell you that you need to appear here, and you owe us this." And he said, "Don't be taken in by this, because you're not you, Y-O-U. You're your own individual person, or not person. You're your own living man." All of that.
You see the difficulty?
Yeah, I know, you fall into it. But it was interesting because he said you need to rebut that and say, "I don't know who this you is you're talking to, because that's not me."
Yeah, well, if you actually look in a dictionary, and sort of a pretty comprehensive dictionary, you'll find the word "you" is a plural.
Right.
Right.
Is it?
It means, you all.
You all.
Yeah. But when we hear it, we hear singular.
Yes.
You. Right?
You.
So
As in you, that individual standing there in front of me. Yeah.
Yeah. So we make an assumption that they're talking about, ourselves, but they're using the plural. And if we just go along with it, we agree to it, if we act as though we are you, then now we are you.
Yes, because we're acting in that what would you call it, in the guise of, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. So
Gosh.
it's always, you always have to, it's again about being an adult, because again, a child will just pick up something, just read it very quickly and not take the time to understand it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you respond to things, right, you send them a notice, they respond. You actually take the time to read very carefully how they respond. Okay, so let's imagine you've tried to deal with a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
And you've sent a notice out to them, and they respond and say, your representation was considered but rejected. Right. Well, if you've written a notice that I've come up with, I don't make a representation. I ask them for certain evidence. Right. So I didn't make a representation.
Didn't make one.
I asked for evidence. But if you're not thinking, if you're not on the ball, you'll ignore that.
Yeah, you're just making assumptions, aren't you?
Yeah, and now you've made a representation because you didn't rebut it.
Right.
So now they've put you onto their process because they know how to deal with representations.
Yes.
Or they might say, yeah, we considered your appeal, but we've denied it. Well, again, I didn't make an appeal. But if you don't rebut it, well, now you made an appeal, and now you're on their tracks. Yeah.
And it's difficult when you're dealing with services that are online and things are unmanned, or it's you cannot respond to this email type things. Mm-hmm. And that must be very difficult for people to get any further than trying to talk to a human.
Right. Well, obviously they have progressively tried to take your options away from you.
Yes.
Yeah. At one point you would deal with a flesh and blood person who was going to, you're going to go back and forth with. But then they turned it into paperwork that, again, you couldn't understand what's going on fully. Now they're putting it all online so that all you can do is tick a box and press OK. Yeah. It's literally taking away your options progressively. But at this point, you can always say, I'd like to, I don't have regular access to the internet. I'd like the paper version, please. Yeah. And then you can deal with it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense, because otherwise you've been pushed into, you're on the rails, aren't you? As you described, because then you can't get off those rails because you've acquiesced.
And every time, if you have to respond to any of these systems, you don't use their system to respond. So they might say, fill in this form to respond. No, you don't fill in their form because their form will put you on their rails. So you respond in your way.
Right. No, you see, that's the thing, isn't it? We all fall into the trap of this is the way it's done, and we don't go, is there any other way, or why should I?
Yeah, because you are the sovereign here, not them. Okay, them saying to you, you have to respond this way. well, hang on, why do I have to respond your way? You know,
Yes. You want a
here's how-
response from me. Here is my response.
here's my response. Deal with it.
Yeah. How do you find this goes down with your audiences? Do you find that there's some people that immediately get it, but there's some who, because we've all been indoctrinated for so long, that find that it's empowering to a point, but they're kind of not sure whether they believe it?
Oh, what happened there?
Oh, I think you've frozen there. I've asked the killer question.
Oh no, well I'm
There we are.
still here.
Yeah,
I'm still here.
okay, you're back.
Wow. No, it's you're right. We've got levels of indoctrination. Yeah, but most of the time the people are there in the first place because they've got over a certain amount of that indoctrination.
Right. Yeah.
But yes, certainly it does stick with you because you've had it for 20 years or 15, 20 years or whatever. And that manifests in people people being scared to take that step.
Yes.
And wanting to have their hand held through it. And again, this is part of becoming an adult because, again, a child needs somebody to hold their hand. It's an adult who take the risk and go, I'll make the effort to understand what's going on, and then I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, because I mean, the society in the last, well, pretty much all my life, and I'm nearly 60 now. And all my life, you get the impression that as I've got older, more and more stuff is done for you, and actually you're told how to do things. You're not asking how to do things. So that in the end, you get to that point where you're not even aware that you could ask, is there another way? That you've been so indoctrinated, this is the form, you need to fill it in. And you go, but, okay. And you just do it, don't you?
Again, you've fallen into another hurdle there, because as a sovereign, you don't ask for permission.
That's what I'm saying is we've got into a phase where we've been indoctrinated so that we don't even know we're sovereign, and that we don't even know we can. It's not that we have to ask; it's just that we just do it.
Exactly.
But you're kind of being told, here's the form, and you're going, oh right, okay. You're not even thinking. Wait, I don't like your form. I just don't like the colour green or whatever it is, on a tax return. I don't like that colour. In fact, I don't really want to pay the tax anyway, because you're only going to go and do wars with it and buy bigger cars for yourself. Or I'm not really keen on any of that. Thanks very much.
But that came from your teacher at school.
Yes.
Your teacher said, right, you've got to fill this in, and this is how you do it, and show you're working and do, and so on. Yeah, and we go, yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
Yeah,
and we do it. That's the indoctrination right there. But
quite.
It's the adult thing to you do it your way, right? Because you're a man. You don't have to ask permission from anyone. You do it your way. As long as you don't harm anyone, you do it your way.
So how does that? So there'll be some people who will go, right, okay, I'm just going to be belligerent and be awkward just for the sake of it. You're going to get those that will go, if you're just filling in a form for your pet to go to the vet or something, and they say, here's the form, and it's all very easy, and they go, no, I've got to put it on the back of a bus ticket. There you go. That's my info. I mean, if they're only going to import it into a computer, it doesn't really matter how they get it, I guess.
No,
just get this bus ticket that's well used. Thank you, sir. But that's not how our system works, sir.
But that's not my problem.
I know. The other thing I used to get was when I would argue with people, and they'd say, "Well, that's not our policy, sir." And I'd say, "Well, it's my policy, and you want my business." But in the end, they go, "Well, sir, you'll have to go elsewhere." And I say, "Well, fair enough. Then I bloody well will."
Right, fair enough, but it's the same as shops now saying that they're not going to accept cash. Right? Well, sorry, that's not our policy. Well, that's not my problem. Here's the cash. Walk out.
Walk out with the goods.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's still, it's legal tender, so they've got an obligation to take it or accept it, even if their policy says that they haven't and they've taken away all the tills.
In fact, if you offer the legal tender, and they refuse it, according to the Bill of Exchange Act, it means that the debt doesn't exist anymore. So you can say, thank you very much, walk out.
But you can't take the legal. Fair enough. I'll have that big Porsche then. I
Yeah,
was going to
it's-
pay you in halfpenny. Oh no, halfpenny coins don't exist anymore.
It's like if I decided I wanted to buy that microphone from you. Yeah,
Well, this one.
yeah, I want to buy that microphone from you. Okay, and I say,
I've got a nice purple one.
no, I want a blue one.
All right, fair enough.
No, so I grab the microphone and I say, here's 10 quid,
Yeah.
or 50 quid, here's 50 quid, yeah? And you say, no, it's all right. I won't take that.
I won't
I'll say,
take that.
okay, thanks a lot.
Right. So even if you say I won't take it, you effective. So that's kind of agreeing to the sale then.
Yeah, it's you agreeing that I
Yeah.
don't want the money.
You don't want that. Yeah.
I've
I
offered
don't-
it to you,
You've offered. Right. Yeah.
and you said, no, I'm not taking it.
But if you
And-
said no, that microphone's not for sale.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
if the microphone was for sale and I
Yeah.
grabbed it and said, here's legal tender, and you said, no, I'm not taking that, I'll be like, oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. And then you.
The bill of exchange, that's what the bill of exchange says. If the money's tendered and it's refused, the debt is extinguished.
There you go. Golly. So now, that you can imagine now people are like, well, all those places that won't take cash, and I'll offer it, and then away they go. As soon as a number of people start doing that, they go, crikey, we're losing money here.
They have to open the tills again.
They'll
That's
have
the
to
point.
open the tills. Yeah, that's right. And if more people do that, then the better the situation is, and we won't necessarily have these central bank digital currency
The
nonsense.
power is in our hands. Yeah. They get their power because we go along with whatever they say.
Yeah.
If we did not go along with what they say, then they can't implement it. It requires us to power it.
Yeah, and that this is a big lesson though, because you cannot knock how much indoctrination, because we've been brought up right from the beginning, and I mean, I've been reading a number of books about all this sort of stuff and interviewing some fantastic people, and I'm beginning to learn all of this. And even though you sort of like in half an hour, you have a conversation, you walk away. It's so indoctrinating that, someone says to me when they come to visit, oh, where can I park? And I say, oh, well, actually, you can't park there because there's double yellow lines or whatever. And in a way, you say, well, you can park there as long as it's not actually obscuring anybody's view or is dangerous or anything like that. And they've just put those lines or those cones. Next door's put his cones up because he wants to park his car there. But he's got no right to do that. Unless perhaps there's a funeral going on or something awkward, something like that, or he's having a delivery, he just does it belligerently. He said, no, it's part there, I just move them. He might get angry.
Yeah, but the indoctrination runs deep because, step back a second. Why do you think you need to pay somebody to live somewhere?
Yes.
Animals
Animals
Yeah.
don't do that, do they? A fox
But-
doesn't sort of go, here's my money for living it down this little hole.
Yeah, birds don't pay badgers rent or anything, do they?
No.
Or squirrels, they don't get mortgages off squirrels, do they? No.
They'd only squirrel it
somehow-
away anyway.
Oh,
Oh, everyone a gem. You can see why my
but-
entertainment career came to an end. Anyway,
But yeah, I mean, somehow they've made us believe that we need to pay
Yes.
someone to live. And that is full indoctrination because it's ridiculous, we feel that we're free, but we are the most controlled species ever because other people tell us what we can and can't do,
yes.
which doesn't make sense.
No, and then you come back with the same argument. If we're all born equal and no one's above the law, how is it you're putting a ticket on my car?
Yeah, it's essentially because this won't be very popular, but they've removed the creator from this world, right? So if there's no creator, and we came along by accident, some freak of nature made stone melt and dissolve into water and came alive and became goo and so on and so on. We're just an accident. So that means powerful people down here can tell us what to do and give us our purpose.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that purpose is ridiculous. That purpose is go to school, get good grades, get a good job so you can buy lots of stuff, then buy more, bigger stuff and faster stuff, and keep doing that until you die.
Yeah.
which isn't very much of a purpose, I think, anyway.
No, and I mean, there are some intrinsic things which are mostly that even the people with the bankers and the people who want to control you cannot control. They cannot control what's beautiful. They cannot control the sun going down and going up. And some of these things, what's beautiful is incredibly rewarding. Whatever it is that you personally find beautiful and you see it, it has a reaction in you. If you enjoy the landscape, for example, and you enjoy animals, all of this is free. They can't at the moment, unless they sort of stop you from going into the countryside by taxing you. Well, they tax you in your cars anyway. But if you're able to walk there and witness, or breathe in reasonably fresh air, that again, it's free. And those things that are free generally are so embracing that everything else is like trinkets. I mean, yes, we need a house to live in and we need water to drink and things like that, but the sort of almost the essential things of standing under a tree, taking shade and going into the sun, it's all free. It's very difficult for people to actually tax that. So the other thing is that I'm rambling here, I realise that, is by making the trinkets ever more shiny, that we want to purchase them, and then as soon as we've purchased them, actually we really wanted to buy that other shiny thing, and so on and so that you get into that loop of debt and having to earn money to do it, and yet
I actually found myself realizing that this whole purpose that had given us was essentially rubbish, because I said I was a computer programmer on Wall Street, making lots and lots of money. I had a big house, I had a Ferrari on the drive, I had a room full of man toys, and I realised that I didn't feel any different. I've got all this money, but my bills just got bigger, and I hung out with the richest guy in our town, a multi-millionaire, thinking he'd be ecstatically happy, but he was miserable, lusting after the mansions in the next town that he couldn't afford, and so I realised it was like a ladder, that there's always a rung that's just out of reach.
Yeah.
And if you manage to get that rung, you go, yeah, got it. And you realise, oh, there's another one.
Yeah,
and,
the summit never arrives.
You never get to that place that they say that, is a place where you'll be fulfilled. You have so much money and the money's going to make you happy and make your life wonderful. You never get there.
And so then we come back to the beginning of the conversation where you say you help people for free, and that's where your reward is.
Yes, because I get rewarded with when people say, "Thank you, you've helped me," and and I feel I've made a difference in that person's life for the better, rather than my work previously, down the road where I didn't see it would hurt somebody, make their life worse.
Yes. Yeah. No. And I think when I left school, I didn't become the actor and the film director. They sent me to this printing job, as I mentioned before. It was a small company, and I learned everything from meeting the customer who would come in and say, I want 500 billheads, mate. And you go, oh, do you mean invoices? Oh, yeah, I suppose so. And you do the letraset, and in those days, computers weren't a thing. It was sort of like do all the letraset, draw all the thing up, the artwork, then go and make the plates, print the thing off. If they had to be cut in a certain way, cut that, package them up, put a good one on the top, and then go and meet the customer and say, here's your stuff. And they go, oh, you've done a really good job there, mate, thanks. And I felt very fulfilled, even though it wasn't what I wanted to do as a career, but as a job. As the company got bigger, I ended up just being in the print machine. I never saw the customer. All I got was the work card that said we want 500 billheads, or the parish magazine or whatever the silly thing was, and I just printed it, and the satisfaction went away because I couldn't meet the customer anymore and present the end result and him go, oh, that's really nice, and feel like you'd completed something.
You just became a cog now.
And I think a lot of people are like that, aren't they, now? Because the bigger these corporations get, the less that you are really their I think nurses, obviously, in that they're seeing the patient and they may go off and have an operation, then come back and they're sort of dealing with them again. And hopefully they see the same people and can say goodbye to them and good luck and all of that. But it's very rare now in the workplace that you have that circular feeling that you've done something right from the beginning. And even if you're not there in all of the operation, to see it, so that you feel personally happy about it.
Yeah, and the other thing is that most people go into these jobs because of the fantasy that goes
Right.
along with their job. So a doctor will go into it thinking, I'm going to help people, I'm going to save people's lives, and then they realise they become drug pushers. Or
Yeah.
a police somebody go into the police thinking, I'm going to stop crime, I'm going to help people, and then they become policy enforcers, and
Yes.
the fantasy draws us in, but then we realise later down the line that we're not who we thought we were.
Well, Dave, you've given us huge amounts of food for thought there. It's absolutely fascinating. We could talk on this subject, I think, for ages. There's so much in it. I'll have to get you back and do another conversation. I must come and see where you're doing a talk. Do you have a website? Do you have extra information that people can find from you? I'm going to get the book and put a link to your book. That sounded fantastic. People will just have to imagine it was a Haynes cover, obviously.
Well,
Haynes manual cover.
I do have a website. It's allegedlydave.com.
Allegedlydave.com. Okay.
Yeah, and I've got a YouTube channel which is dmurphy25. That's the channel name.
Right.
But if you do a search for Allegedly Dave, you'll find it, and you will also find it on BitChute and Odyssey. So the videos that got taken down from YouTube, you'll find them on the other channels.
I'm learning that at the moment with my 7-day ban of trying to fathom these other platforms. Dave, thank you so much for talking to us. I've really enjoyed it. It's been absolutely enlightening, and I think more of these conversations need to take place across, so that people do understand that they're sovereign and they understand where the fraud is, and that they can free themselves from all of this. And hopefully, the next generation are being brought up with this just as an innate thing, rather than us all having to relearn what is true and what isn't, and that the future will be a much better place for grandchildren and so on.
Indeed, and
so you're doing good work, mate. You're doing.
The thing
great
to
work.
remember though is this is a game that we're playing, and rather than get sucked into the minutiae of the game, enjoy playing.
Enjoy playing.
Yeah. They can't. The game of snakes and ladders isn't fun without the snakes. So
no,
enjoy
that's
the
true.
snakes.
It's all ladders. You've got to, because then you appreciate every ladder you get to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dave, allegedly Dave, it's been fantastic. And I hope one day I can come across and watch you on your electric unicycle and skirting across the South Downs. How brilliant that would be. Ladies and gentlemen, how about that? Another fantastic interview. Big thanks to Dave. I'll put all the links in so people can check you out and follow you and all of that. But in the meantime, thanks again, Dave. That was great.
No problem. See you later.
And I will be back with more interviews. So do stay tuned, as it were. Until the next one, from Dave and I, goodbye.